The Holy Gospel according to Matthew. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. Such great crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat there, while the whole crowd stood on the beach. And he told them many things in parables, saying, "Listen, a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seeds fell on the path, and the birds came and ate them up. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up quickly, and since they had no depth of soil, but when the sun arose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Let anyone with ears listen. Hear the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what is sown in the heart. That is what was sown on the path. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet such a person has no root, but endures only for a while. And when trouble or persecution arises on account of the word, that person immediately falls away. As for what was sown among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the lure of wealth choke the word, and it yields nothing. But as for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise you, Lord Christ.
Grace and peace and wisdom and courage be to all of you today. We've got a full day ahead of us, or at least a very jam-packed morning. So I tried to condense things a little bit to move things along. Any objections? Yeah, I didn't think so. A short sermon, perhaps? You're tough people. I thought I'd get a round of applause for that one. Woohoo! We'll see. Maybe you know me better, huh? Today's so familiar parable rivets our attention on the activity of the sower, and therefore, as explained in the second half of the gospel reading, the good news message of God's presence in our world. On the one hand, the repeated images of failure lend realism to the work that we do as church, and it rings all too true in our time. Many will not be receptive to the message that we are called to speak, and some will not persist in its faithful practice. Yet the parable also reassures us and Jesus' first followers in Matthew's readers, both the ancient ones and us contemporary folk, that if we persevere, even against the odds, what we do and what we do this day matters. What we say and how we embody the gospel in practice will make a difference in our world. And what we do will bear fruit, whether in individual lives or in this congregation or in this community or the wider world. So keep on keeping on, folks. Amen. Oh, I thought that would work. Yeah. I just made Valerie jump, and that was fun. Sorry, dear. But the side of that is that even though with the pressing engagements and responsibilities we have to fulfill this day, a solid, good beginning will pave its way to something more fruitful. Be present in the word, be present in the meal, be present in community this day. But I'd like to shift us for just a couple more moments and invite you all to reflect, both in terms of your own individual lives, in the lives of your family, and in the lives of this community of faith. Shift your gaze from the soil to the soil environment. We can ask, well, then, really, what more need be said? After all, the tag that Jesus appends to this parable invites our engagement, and it's so easy to kind of skip over and miss, as Jesus says in the 9th verse, let anyone with ears listen. Not speak, but listen. Listen first. So in a creative listening mode, what if we shift our gaze from the sower to the conditions that foster or hinder growth? We may revisit the imagery of the parable and reimagine what it is asking of us today. In our own time, in our own space, what do seed-devouring birds and lack of roots and suffocating thorns look like for us today? What experiences engender discouragement and despair rather than hope? And what leads some folks beyond the church walls to turn away even as they continue to seek meaning and purpose for their own lives? What should we be doing individually, in our own lives and as a community, as cultivators of the soil from which faith may spring to invite, to encourage, to sustain the faithfulness, the hungering and the thirst for righteousness and for justice, to which Matthew's readers are called? As I look around, I see things that pose real challenges to faith. To name just a few intersecting concerns, the intractable poverty and the wealth gap that seems to be growing even wider. Structural racism that's still denied by many persons of privilege. Intensified cultural polarization and continuing waves of gun violence in our world. And systemic failures of governance at every single level. And especially relevant today in reflection upon this story that features soil and its conditions. Conditions that lead to crop failure in global climate change and its devastating effects felt most keenly by people who live in poverty. And whether visualized as a beaten path or rocky ground or thorny patch, these realities make faithful response to claims of the gospel difficult for many of us. If we attend not only to the task of proclaiming the word, but also to the hard work of cultivating nourishing conditions favorable to its reception. we may hear in this parable about the sower, seeds, and soil a fresh word for our lives today. And to that end, I leave you with a few more questions. You know I do that. More questions than answers. For us here in this place where God has planted us, I ponder on these questions and gift them to you. In the next month, in the next year perhaps. And hopefully you prepare to receive a new member of your team to come alongside to consider them as well. So first, how did the words and actions here in this place at this time in our worship shape and form us as a people of God? Second, how are we forming people for faith? Now, a quick jump most people will make, we got to have Sunday school back again. Maybe the new pastor will have a Sunday school again. That may be. But don't leave it to others, and especially small children. That is the role of adults every day of our lives. As long as I live and breathe, I'm still learning something new. And finally, what will that formation look like when it gets out into the world? God is not done with us, as you know, but here present in spirit, engendering and challenging us as faithful followers of the gospel. Blessings on the journey, my brothers and sisters. Blessings to you. Amen.